You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, people-centric leaders, guess what? We are going to continue our discussion on head trash with myself, Don Harkey, and Diana Royalty, and Stephanie Anderson. If you missed the last episode and you haven't listened to it yet, you need to go back and listen to it because you're going to pick up some good stuff. But here's the good news is if you missed the last episode, you can still listen to this one. Don't have to jump back now and then go back to the other part. It doesn't matter. Doing things in order is kind of its own head trash, right, Diana? Diana, would you ever listen to part 2 and then go back to part 1 in your life? Would you ever do that?
You're asking because you know that I will strongly disagree. I will say that you must go back and listen to part 1 before you listen to part 2. Otherwise, you're insane and there's something wrong with you. But if you want to, fine.
Rude.
Okay.
Rude. Okay. I once read the 4th book in a series and none of the first 3.
No, Stephanie, no.
You did it.
I once saw a movie that started with episode 4.
Well, everybody did that.
Well, yeah.
Star Wars, y'all.
It's Star Wars.
Yeah. Did that freak you out when you first saw it? And it opened up, it's like episode 4. And you're like, wait, what?
I mean, it did. I was uncomfortable with it. Yeah, I was uncomfortable with that. But I quickly got on board. So it was.
And then you got lost in Chewie's eyes and just kept on going and watching the movie?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I like that because we were talking about this episode is about head trash part 2 because we had so much head trash where that gets in all of our heads, right? How many of you have head trash? Stephanie, do you have any head trash?
No, thank you.
Okay, so Stephanie is what we call a control subject for the rest of us. If it seems weird to Stephanie, then it's head trash. But if it seems normal to Stephanie, then it's not head trash.
I like this. Yeah, this makes sense to me. So, and I'm on a river and it's called Denial.
It's called Denial River.
Okay. Yeah, we're full of good jokes today. You're welcome.
That's pretty good. That's excellent. Outstanding. So as we get into this, last time we talked about the idea of narrative paradigms, that people get stuck in their own stories and how that impacts them. We talked about the reality distortion field, the idea of some people who are just like, I don't want to look at reality, so I'm going to look at my own version of reality and I'm going to live here. And this is going to be a lot more fun for me. And then we also talked about toxic positivity. And it sounds like that's a weird one if you haven't listened to it, because you think, well, positivity is, well, positive. It's a good thing, right? But toxic positivity, if it looks like everyone's happy and getting along, then we are. And they a lot of times avoid conflict to an extreme, which creates conflict. One really good way to turn conflict into something really bad is to just avoid it altogether. So today we wanted to jump into some new ones. We're going to talk a little bit about narcissism. We're going to talk about pot stirrers. And we're going to talk a little bit about chicken littles. So those are going to be 3 of them that we're going to throw out here. Now, Stephanie made me say this ahead of time of saying we're not licensed clinicians. So if you're listening to this, we're not trying to diagnose you. This isn't listen to People Centric Podcast and get free therapy. This is listen to us and get really solid business advice so that you can go to your therapist and you can talk to your therapist and find out if what's wrong with you. But I think that as somebody who has been, I'm also in a really weird mood today, everybody. So if everybody is listening to me, it's kind of weird. But what's Diana? We okay?
Also, don't know how to rein it in. Like usually you can rein it in. I don't know what's going on with you today. I can't get it reined in.
I feel like that actually this is always going on within me, but I'm usually able to rein it in. And today I'm just like, you know what? It's coming out. The goofiness is just going to flow today. And so
this will be fun then.
Yeah. Well, this is our podcast and not yours. So if you're a listener, just buckle up. Just get ready. That's what you have to do today. So again, this is not saying all this head trash stuff. I think we all have head trash. You know, I talked about therapy and go talk to your therapist about that. You know, 10 years ago, if I said go talk to your therapist about that, that was an insult. What I like to think is today, that's not an insult. That's literally go talk to your therapist about that. Just like I would go see that doctor for that spot. whatever, or that cough that you have, whatever it is, you should go work with a therapist. So I just wanted to lean into that. So if you get into some of these things and you're like, man, I think that I do suffer from some of these things, this head trash, how can I get past this stuff for myself? Then therapy might be an option for you. And we are not the therapist. So there you go. So go ask someone who cares. That's my point. That's my punchline at the end of all of this.
Okay, for the record, because you said I told you to say this, that is not what I told him to say exactly. I mean, we got close to the spirit of it,
That's
but
true.
just to defend myself here.
You said a very simple thing. Just remind everybody we're not clinicians.
Yeah. And like that I think this is not an attempt to diagnose or treat any real mental health issues or disorders. And just prefacing that, because again, you mentioned we're talking about narcissism today. And I think there's different ways of interpreting that word. And one of them is like an actual like clinical personality dysfunction. And so that's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And you may have traits of narcissism and not be a narcissist. And I think most of us have some traits or some tendencies towards narcissism because we all live in our own heads. We don't get to jump into other people's heads. So let's start with that. So what is a narcissist? And so I looked up the definition of a narcissist, and I always laugh when other people start podcasts this way. Webster's dictionary defines narcissist as a person who has an excessive interest in or admiration of themselves. The world revolves around them. So it's somebody who just really focuses only on them. Diana, I just saw you have like an insight. I don't know if you're watching on the video and you could see Diana, something turned on, a light turned on.
I don't know if it was an insight, but like, I think we should mention that most people think the world revolves around them, right? Like we're
all the main character.
We're all the main character. Totally. Yeah. But I think this is deeper than that. That's what I was like, oh, that's an interesting definition. This is deeper than just like main character energy.
I think that's so it says excessive interest.
Yeah.
Right. It's only about you and it's everybody else. Why is that about me? And I mean, there are certain tendencies where we get lost in ourselves so much in our own story as the hero. Like we talked a little bit about like the idea of road rage. Like if you're driving to work and somebody cuts you off and it's just you get super, super angry. What your brain is trying to tell you is that person woke up that morning thinking Diana's on her way to work this morning. She's running a little bit late. So I'm going to go cut her off to make her late because I hate Diana and I want to destroy her. And I mean, that's what our brain is kind of saying to us. We don't consciously think that, but we feel that way. And I think that's kind of thing is normal that we get lost in that. It's just when you can't get out of that, that it really starts to impact other people. So let's talk about this. Like what kinds of tendencies do we see? How does this impact in business? How does this impact managers, supervisors, employees? Give us some wisdom. Go.
I mean, I think you see it a lot of like, it's kind of the person who forgets that there are other people in the company besides them. And what I mean by that is they start making decisions based on what feels right to them, is going to benefit them, makes them look good. And they forget that there's another side to a lot of that. They forget that, hey, maybe what could be great for me or makes me feel good might not be a good solution for everyone else, or it may even hurt other people. And I think it's the person who loses sight of some of that. And again, it's more than just, oh, I'm the main character, because we all think that way. It's, I think, the person who starts making decisions or treating people a certain way because that's what's beneficial to them and to the image that they want to project to other people. And I think that's a big piece of narcissism in the workplace too, is I have to project this persona that really nobody could live up to or could do, because nobody is a genius at everything. Nobody is like awesome every single day, but it's like they're trying to project that and forget that there's other people that are impacted by that attitude and that behavior.
Yeah. And I think we also see it a little bit in people who are like, oh, everyone around me is dumb, right? Like I don't have the staff that is smart enough to keep up with me. And no one understands what I'm trying to do. And my vision is not being fulfilled. Like, I think you see a lot of that in the like narcissistic leaders of everyone around me is dumber and less than me. And I'm not getting anywhere because of them. And when you start hearing that narrative, there's oh, wait a minute. Is it everyone around you? or is it you? Question, you know?
And it usually shows up when the person's a little off guard, right? Because if you talk to a person who really has some narcissistic tendencies and you said, do you think other people are important? They would say, well, of course they are. But then they'll drop little comments of like, well, I guess I better be the one that does that because I'm the only one that could do that. And it's like, whoa, wait, you're the only one that could do, or no one would do that as well as I can do that. I mean, and some of you are going like, crap, if I've said that, does that mean I'm narcissist? No, it does not mean that, because I know a lot of you have said that because you're very, very good at your job. But if you'd really, really, truly take a step back and you believe that, then yes, you are. Like, you're really lost in that. If you really believe there's nobody else in the world that can do what you do, my dad used to always say there's somebody out there better, like at just about everything that you do, which doesn't sound very motivational, father-sonish, but it was very, very, it's a warm memory for me. And it's humbling because you just realize, yeah, there is somebody out there that can probably do what you do better than you. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. I think about my favorite narcissist story was a CEO of a company I used to work for. We'll just protect the innocent again, and we'll just call it 3M. Came over from GE. I won't say his name. We'll drop his name. But later he went on to Boeing. Just saying, look at 3M and Boeing right now. Just pointing this out. But he gave an all company address when he first came in. And it was, they did it on the, I don't even remember what they used to call it, but like satellite TV. This, like, the internet was kind of there, but they didn't do like Zoom calls, but we all had to go in a conference room and he put it on the TV and he spoke to the entire company. And he said, like many of you, I just spent 3 weeks in Vail skiing. That's how he opened up the conversation. Like many of you, I'm sure. I just spent 3 weeks in
Schma.
Yeah.
I eat caviar at dinner every night, just like the common folk.
It's like, it was such like a let them eat cake, which is a famous quote, right? Let them eat cake. I don't understand why people are poor and they're hungry. Just eat cake. There's cake everywhere I go. It's the loss of that. And the danger of it, and let's talk about like what's the impact on other people here. But I think the danger of it was looking around that room was he lost everybody in that room in the first thing he said. Everybody in the room looked around like, did you spend 3 weeks in Vail? Like, I don't even get 3 weeks vacation yet. Like,
was there anyone in that room that had been 3 weeks in Vail? Like anyone? Yeah.
No. And you're talking to the entire company. Like, you're talking to frontline people. You're talking, I mean, literally, like, it was tone deaf. It's tone deaf. That same person, when they came to our plant, this shows you that why I also think that this person has narcissistic tendencies. Yeah, they went to they came to our plant and toured it. They kept me as far away from him as possible. It was a side funny true story. But they were like, hey, Don, you want to go play with his bike? And they locked me into this closet on this. Not really, but they wanted me away from the CEO. And so anyway, they had brought lunch in. So somebody else told me this. They brought lunch and they brought like Panera in. And so they had just the boxes, the pre-packed boxes. And so he excused himself from the room to go wash his hands. And all of these executive vice presidents who were with him, suddenly, like, everybody was getting in line and starting to take boxes. All the executive vice presidents that were with him took the boxes back from people and said, like, we gotta make his box because he's got a favorite sandwich and his favorite chips and his favorite cookie. And so they were opening boxes up left and right. And I mean, these are executive vice presidents of a Fortune 500 company digging through going, we need a peanut butter cookie. Who's got a peanut butter? Okay, you got a peanut butter cookie. All right, we need the ham and Swiss. And we got the ham and Swiss, and then took the chips and then reformed it into a box and packed it up quickly before he came. And then when he showed up, they handed it to him. And they said the second part of that story is watching him take the box when he walked in, and he just took the box and went and sat down. Didn't observe that nobody else had a box, nobody else had sat down, didn't observe like people looking at him weird or like looking around like, did that just happen?
We do this for you every single time we have box lunches, Don. You just didn't know it. We do this for you.
You know, it's funny as we say all this stuff because I think it's funny we're talking about the narcissist thing. I was going to also use like, what if it was like the boss of the company and everybody celebrates their birthday? And then I realized, like, if you're watching us on YouTube, there's a giant 50 on the wall behind me because I just turned 50. Yeah, we'll accept your cards and we'll drop the address at the end so you can send your cards and gifts. So I decided not to use that example.
It was a milestone birthday.
was a milestone, and I did not require it or ask
You
you guys
didn't
for
ask
stuff.
for it.
You guys were fantastic. They did, guys, listen to this, what they did. They created a video. They did just like a podcast, just like this. They jumped on just like we would do for the podcast, and they made me my own like podcast episode with video of 50 things they love about me. How cool is that? That is so cool. It was touching. And I was glad I was in the office by myself watching it because it was a moment. I had a good moment. So thank you,
Well,
everybody, for that.
now you know that we did the birthday thing, and when you leave the room, we cobbled together boxes in a hurry so that you get exactly what you want.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah. And your lunch order was right that day. So
Yeah.
you're welcome. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that. Yeah. So I mean, what's the impact on the team when somebody's being narcissistic?
Oh man. Well, it's funny because that one story, right? That like weird box thing sort of is indicative of how everything has to run. If you're trying to please one person, then you're not actually fulfilling the mission of the company, right? You're just trying to please this human. And I've seen it in companies with, these types of leaders who they're constantly moving the goalposts because this is what they want at certain given times. And the employees are constantly chasing the praise and adoration of the executive and not really doing the work, not really doing the good work, right? Like they put everything else on the back burner just to please this human, and it makes for a weak company, and I think it makes for a weak product, and it makes for weak services, and they never get to where they really want to be, and that just frustrates this narcissistic leader even more. But yeah, they never get where they want to go, and I think yeah.
And a lot of that's not just to please them, but also to not displease them.
True.
Right. On that exact same visit, the plant manager found out that CEO had been yelling at people if he saw full warehouses. So if you walked into your warehouse and your warehouse was full, he would yell at them because that's inventory and that's bad. Right. It didn't matter the size of the warehouse or how long the stuff had been there. Like you need to know more information than just looking at the warehouse. But that's what he knew. So he just look at the warehouse. So they said, you empty your warehouse. So our plant spent tens of thousands of dollars moving inventory out of our warehouses to temporary trailers hidden literally in the woods behind the plant, so that he couldn't see that. So when he walked through, their warehouses looked just about empty. So if you have narcissistic tendencies, you may not realize it that people aren't telling you stuff because you're not going to be open to feedback and they might be hiding stuff from you. So flip that around. If you're a boss or supervisor and people are constantly hiding things from you and they're not telling you things and they're not telling you when your baby's ugly or you're being mean or you're making a bad decision, check yourself a little bit. What are you doing that might be making them do that? A lot of times people will complain to us like, well, my people never tell me anything. And it's like, well, then we'll tell them why they're not telling you anyway, and then they'll yell at us. And you're like, that's why. Now I get why people don't tell you anything. And the good thing is we can say that because we work for the outside. And if you fire us, we'll go on to the next client. That's cool. If I'm an employee, I probably am not going to take that kind of a risk. I'll shut up. You've trained me. I will keep my thoughts in my head and not move on from that. So,
yeah, I would say with that too, I think, if you're somebody who I think is hearing some of this and thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I have some of that head trash. I think part of it too, maybe just to give a little grace, is I think that's a really like kind of old school traditional mindset of the leader is like, I'm the ultimate everything for this business. If I'm the ultimate decision maker, I have to be the highest paid person. Everything has to run past me first. And to Diana's point of like, you not only lose like the bad things, like people aren't coming to you with problems, but they're also not coming to you with good ideas. And so you accomplish a lot less. And so I would say if you also hear yourself saying, well, my team doesn't ever come to me even with ideas or problem solver, they bring everything to me and they can't work independently. Like maybe it's because you have some head trash about your position as a leader in the company and that people can't do things without you, or that every new initiative, every new thing has to flow directly from your seat and your desk. And that's head trash. Because to what you were saying, Dawn, about your dad, like saying like there's probably somebody better, of like there's probably even somebody on your team who's better at certain things than you. And if you're not utilizing that strength, then your company's missing out on the talent that you're already paying for.
Yeah, agreed. Well said. All right, let's get to the next one. The pot stirrer. So this is the person on the team that likes to create drama. They like drama. Drama's their friend. And they'll say they don't like to create drama. They'll say like, look, hey, I don't want to stir this up, Stephanie, but listen, Diana said some stuff the other day that I think you should be aware of, because she is, I think you just need to know. I think you just need to know. And I'm just going to put it here, and I'm going to let you decide what to do with this. So first of all, why do pot stirrers stir their pot?
I don't know why, but I love pot stirrers. I just need to put that out there. I want the pot stirrers to come to me. I want to hear all of the tea, and then I'm going to find out what's going on. But I'm an outside consultant, so like the pot stirrers are good for me. I don't want to work with a pot stirrer, but I do love the pot stirrers.
See, and this is where the pot stirrers really annoy me, because I'm like, don't make up problems that don't exist. Because I feel like that's what happens with the pot stirrers a lot, is they'll get like a little whiff of something that's happening somewhere. And then they go to this person, oh, well, did you hear that? And what did you hear? And do you think we should go talk to so-and-so about that? And then all of a sudden they've conducted their own like internal survey. And I've talked to 20 people about this thing that's really not even a thing. But now everybody's thinking about it and everybody's talking about it. And like I've seen this happen in companies, and I've even worked at a company where this happened once. And by the time it got all the way back around to the person who made that first comment, they were like, oh, I don't even care. Like, I'm not even upset about this. That was just an offhanded comment. And you took that and you went and asked everybody how they felt about it and what did they think, and collected their feedback and got all this. And you really just stirred the pot. And now it is an issue because people are upset about something that doesn't even exist.
Yeah, yeah.
And Donna, you just asked like, why do they do that? And I think it is a internal ploy for power. It's, I want to feel powerful. I want others to see me as powerful. I want to be seen as a problem solver or whatever it is, but they're doing the exact opposite. It's not working. Yeah.
So this is another one of those things that you will talk about, that I'll say pot stirrers, and people are listening and be like, yes, I hate pot stirrers. Like, for example, and then start talking about, I heard a podcast on pot stirrers the other day, and you want to hear who I think is a pot stirrer on our team, and go back and stir the pot. So you got to be a little bit self-aware here if you're listening. If you really think you like to help people, and you really think jumping on that Facebook comment for that person who said they were having I had a bad day at work today, and you jump on there and say, well, that's because your boss is an idiot and you should quit your job. I read a study about that. Like, why do people do that on social media? And they said they do that because your brain like releases endorphins when you do that, because it's like a really quick way of helping somebody. Like, you feel like you're helping them. Like, they're asking for help and you're helping them, except that they're not asking for your help when they're pot stirring. Like, some pots, I like, Diana, your first point, some pots need to be stirred. And we like it when we talk to a team and a team says, we do have some problems and there are things we could do better. But it's done in a way that I'm trying to actually make it better, not just stir it up, not just make it go. I think about a best example of this one I can think of is I was at, this was a long time ago at church. My wife had gone out with some friends of hers. And the next day at church, one of her friends came up to me, said, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you about your wife. And I'm like, what's going on? She says, your wife almost got a tattoo last night. And I kept telling her that she should absolutely run that by you. And why would you want to go do that without talking to him first and doing all this stuff? And I was sitting looking at her like, what is wrong with you? Like, why would you, like, first of all, I do not give my wife permission or not permission to get tattoos, whatever, go, whatever you want to do. Like, that's your choice. I prefer not to see the tear on the face or something like that. But, if you wanted to do that, whatever, right? It's up to you. But then why would you go and say that? Like, so I think in that moment, she wanted to be the hero. Like, I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to save the world. And it feels really, really good. So let's get into the last one here on our list, the Chicken Littles. The Chicken Littles. What's the Chicken Little story?
Okay. I'm kind of a Chicken Littler. I get the Chicken Littles. I'm just going to say it here. The Chicken Littles, if you don't know the reference, it's this children's story. I think it's a children's story.
That's a
Yeah.
kid's story.
Yeah, it's like a kid's story where chicken, this chicken named Little, I obviously do not, I don't know the story. I just know the concept. I am making all of this up right now.
Oh my gosh. You're like, there's a little chicken.
There's a little chicken and he keeps saying the sky is falling. He's very worried that the sky is falling, but the sky is not actually falling. It's probably just rain. I don't know the story. I know the concept. I'm just now realizing that I don't actually know the story of Chicken Little.
But
But regardless, I can't.
I like that you jumped in anyway. I like that you jumped in like, let me tell you the story of Chicken Little.
Listen, I am a chicken because I am a chicken littler. And I feel like I am the person who, if one drop of rain happens, I'm like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Now, I have learned to turn that positively and be okay with it. Lots of therapy, guys, like we were saying earlier. But I think it is a thing where people will hear one tiny bit of news and then take it to this extreme of, oh my goodness, the company's going to close, or oh my gosh, I'm getting fired, or this department's getting laid off, right? I think that The Office, Michael Scott was quite a chicken littler. He would hear something about another branch and then he'd be like, they're closing the Scranton branch. And that was like the whole deal for 2 seasons, just they're
Is that
closing.
going to impact us? Probably will. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll probably land on my feet, but you're in trouble.
Destitute. Yeah.
I think the key to
So-
Chicken Little though, Diana, like you're kind of a Chicken Little. Like sometimes
I
we
am.
will talk about things and Diana's like that one of her favorite lines from Dumb and Dumber is our pets' heads are falling off. Like it's these things, and it's like, no, take a step back. We're okay. We're still fine. It's okay. But I think that the second part of that story is not that Chicken Little just feels like that, but he tells everybody about it. And he tells everybody not like, hey, I'm concerned about this. Should we look at this? Like Diana does, but says like, our pets' heads are falling off. Like, what are we gonna do now? And it has well, let's ask, what impact does the Chicken Little have on the other little chickens?
Well, since I don't know the story, I'm just gonna
You can just
assume
make it up. You can just make it up.
that it is very stressful. I could not
Yeah.
imagine if Don was coming to me all the time being like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get sued. Oh my gosh, we're gonna close the company. Oh my gosh, we have no money. I mean, that's incredibly stressful. And I don't think I could handle that. I know I couldn't handle that. So
Well, yeah, and that is the Chicken Little story of like something falls on her head and she's like, we've got to go tell the king. And so like as she goes, she's like telling all the other animals, don't do this, don't do that because the sky is falling. And they're like, well, how do you know that? And she's like, I felt it and I saw it with my own eyes. And her story just gets so strong. But yeah, I think you're right of like it creates a lot of times panic and stress where it doesn't need to be. Like I think we'll sometimes hear that. I was thinking of a more recent one I've heard from someone in my life of somebody made an offhand comment at work and then it got turned around to that they were quitting. And like that was the story. And it was because they play a really critical role on the team and somebody got freaked out. They're like, oh my gosh, if they left, then this would happen and then this would happen and that would be so bad. And they were like, well, I wasn't even thinking about that. I didn't mean it that way, but that's the way that you heard it. And I think the Chicken Little doesn't often check their own stories, right? Because like if you read the nursery fairy tale, like she doesn't check her story to like think like what hit me on the head and when and why and how and what was happening around me that something fell on me. It was just like something fell on me and so the sky is falling. And so I think Diana, this is where I would say you're kind of not a Chicken Little because usually if something hits you on the head, you're like, ow, what was that? And you look around
Who threw this at me?
Who threw something at me again? And you try
Likely.
to figure out what it was. And then like you look for the evidence before you write the story. And I think Chicken Littles create their stories really fast and they don't often take like a moment to be like, oh, okay. Number one, is this accurate? Is this true? Number two, like, does it help or hurt the team for me to share this? And so if I need to share it, who is the relevant person to share it with? Like it's kind of akin to the idea of like gossip, right? Of like, are you sharing information you don't need to be sharing with other people that doesn't help them? It doesn't help the person that the story is about. But yeah, I think the Chicken Littles, they kind of catastrophize and they let their stories develop really quickly, and then they share them, and it
Yep.
becomes reality, whether it was or not, because we've just
And they lose credibility, right? They lose credibility by doing that. So then whenever the sky really is falling, it's like, oh, that's just Chicken Little. It's like
And-
crying the boy who cried wolf.
And it leads to weird decision making too. If the sky is falling and that's the information that you have, you're going to make weird decisions based on that. And I think that's like a terrible mistake, right? Like you can't possibly make good decisions when you're in this constant state of catastrophe, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
One of my very favorite quotes is actually on the bulletin board behind me, this kind of like rainbowy colored one. It's Nelson Mandela, and it's, may your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears.
Oh,
And I think, thank you. Yeah. It's one of my very favorite quotes. And I think for Chicken Little is like, yeah, if we go too far down that path and we start making decisions in our teams or in our companies based on worst case scenarios, it's not helping the team as much as we think it is, because it's not, like, the worst case scenario rarely happens. Like, if we're really, really honest with ourselves, the worst case scenario rarely happens. It's not common. We may have some like blowback or backlash, or not everything may go right. But I actually went through an exercise once when I was like taking my entrepreneurship classes, and they actually had you sit down and think through, like, okay, if you were to start a business and it failed, like, play that all the way out to the worst case scenario, because they're like, the reason that a lot of people don't start something new is because they can see a singular bad outcome and they don't do it for that reason. And so, like, for me, I wrote mine all the way out to, like, I am homeless. That is the true worst case scenario.
totally.
Is like, I fail so badly, I lose all of my money, everyone in my life disowns me because I owe them money, and I am homeless, right? And like, the likelihood of that ever happening is so low, really. And that's not to discredit anyone's real suffering and pain in life, right? But just thinking about those things, of sometimes if we're chicken littling a lot and we find ourselves making decisions based on worst case scenarios or really bad case scenarios, to challenge ourselves and think, okay, how likely is it that that is what's really going to happen? Like, it's pretty likely we'll make mistakes. It's pretty likely it's not going to go perfectly, but that it's going to go that badly, or that if that one person left, the whole company would fall apart. Like, it's just not reality. And I think that's the head trash of the Chicken Little, is that, again, like, we're trying to help, right? And same as the pot stir. Like, I think some of the root of that is like, the Chicken Little is like trying to raise the flag and make sure we don't miss things, but not realizing that it's not always helpful for the team to hear the worst case scenario. Kind of, especially for me, like, I'm a super like whiteboarder, ideation, like, really takes the wind out of my sails to come up with new ideas. If every time I bring up an idea, you tell me what's wrong with it. Totally. I just don't want that feedback. Thanks.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Just kidding. But yeah, but it is true of, like, people aren't going to bring new ideas and stuff to you if you catastrophize it.
Yep. So I think my question, to kind of wrap all this up, there's probably other head trash that we did not discuss. These are just like general themes that we see. But like, what do we do with this information? If we think either we have some of this or the people around us have some of this, what can we do? Like, what's the next steps to sort of get past some of this and acknowledge it, maybe?
I mean, I think the good news of this is if you can identify a problem, then you can start to work to fix it, right? And that's what we always say, like, when we do professional coaching with people, is like, coaching is successful if someone can identify kind of what the problem is and they actually want to work to fix it. So good. It's in some ways like, good news, great job. If you deal with some of this head trash, if you can acknowledge it, then you can start taking active steps to work past it. And a couple of things that I would throw out there is, one, just like, kind of like, write this down and think about it a little bit, and think about how it shows up for you and why. Right? Because I think the root of a lot of this is insecurity. Like, if we're really, really honest with ourselves, for a lot of us, there's some insecurity, or there's something that's happened in our lives or our work lives that makes us feel like we have to act a certain way. And so, like, starting to identify that and work through that. And I would add on to that of, like, if you can kind of figure that out, then you can ask for help. And help might be, if I really identify a real root cause, maybe something in my life, then how we were saying earlier, that might be a good moment to go talk to a therapist and say, I don't like how I'm showing up. And I think this is a part of it. Can you help me dig deep on that and unpack it? But for many of you, it may be something that is not quite that like deep or personal, and go to somebody on your team who you trust to give you honest feedback. And this could be your manager or your boss, or it could be a colleague or a coworker, or even an employee who reports up to you, and go to them and say, I'm recognizing that sometimes I do this and it's not helping me be as successful as I want to be. And so like, could you kind of can we create some secret signal or something where you can kind of give me like a really kind and quiet heads up when I'm doing it, because I'm working to create a new habit here. That would be my recommendation. I don't know what you would add to that.
No, I love that. And I think part of the reason we do these things, and because I'm vulnerable sometimes and say like, yeah, I've got this one head trash, I'm a chicken littler, right? Is so that people see that this is normal. This is like, everybody's got something, right? And that you can sort of turn it into a positive, right? Just because I catastrophize things, because I do, that's my natural tendency. But again, what Stephanie was saying, what Don was saying, I don't tell everybody when I think the sky is falling. I have learned that I can take it to a certain point and plan and get us, a good contingency plan built and build for worst case scenario and kind of have it in my own head, but I don't have to make it negative. I can turn it into a positive trait. So I think there are things that even with head trash, you can flip positively, right? The pot stirrer can still be a helper. If that's the root of it, you can still do that. You just have to not stir. You have to I don't know, whisk. I don't know. I lost the analogy. Philip would be very disappointed in me.
Oh, yeah. Philip's our good story analogy.
Right?
Yeah. I like that though. And like, even thinking back to part one of like, for me, that narrative paradigm piece for me is the one I struggle with sometimes. I'll be like, okay, we're the good guys and then they're all the bad guys, right? And like, I'm very like justice oriented as a person. And so I tend to kind of go there sometimes, and I have to check myself and be like, okay, Stephanie, what's your core belief? It's like, okay, all humans are good, and most people do like make decisions because they're trying to do the right thing. Yes, there is a small subset of humanity that I think are the evil dictator villains, but most people I will meet in my lifetime are good people who are trying to do the right thing. And so if that's true, like, it's kind of that, like, what would a kind, smart person do? Why would a kind, smart person think that or do that or believe that way? I have to like check myself. And sometimes I have to go to somebody and be like, so I've written this story in my head and I need you to point out all of the plot holes and like poke holes in this and challenge me to think about it a different way, because I'm getting stuck in they suck and they're the villain and there's nothing redeemable about this like viewpoint.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Is there anything else we should talk about with head trash? I mean, probably. There's probably so much.
There's probably a lot more, but I mean, yeah, maybe just to put a bow on these 2 episodes of like, we touched on a couple, and I think everybody has probably their own unique version of some of these. These are just common ones. And again, like, there is a difference between having just like head trash, and these are like hurdles we've created in our brain, maybe that hold us back, or habits we've created that don't help us anymore. And those are distinctly different from mental health and some of those pieces. And so that'd be just, again, the mental health disclaimer that I told Don to say at the beginning, but is that like, if you really, really are struggling and you're stuck in some of these things, it can be helpful to just get an outside perspective. Maybe like seek counseling or a therapist or a friend in your life who can really help you process through some of those things. Because if it feels like, okay, yeah, like this is really impacting my quality of life, my ability to form relationships, it might be a little bigger than head trash, but I think for a lot of us, if we're honest, some of it is just insecurity and head trash that we can kind of reframe things for ourselves. We can create new habits that help us.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say is I bet a lot of us listened to this and thought about other people. But we can't change
That's
others.
a good call
right?
out.
Like
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to change those people. They are who they are. You can change only how you interact and react. So don't try to change those people because that's not going to be worth your time. Just
Yes.
that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. That's a good call out. Yeah. Because I think it's easy to sometimes identify this head trash in other people and not ourselves. So that's a good call out. And I'm sure Don would say the same thing. Don had to jump away for a minute. So that's why you're not hearing him talk, but I think he would say the same thing and agree with us and say we're right. So grand.
He usually does say we're right. He's very good at that. All right. Well, we'll leave it with that. And if you guys have any other things you want to talk about with head trash, you want us to talk about, questions you have, topics you want to send us, everything and how to get a hold of us is in the outro. So listen to that and get a hold of us because we love talking to you. We love interacting with you. But if that's it, then we'll just talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.